which render the reader merely a passive participant whose only freedom in reading is to accept or to reject the text, nothing more than a referendum. Or we might think of paperback novels, pulp fiction books. I love the Harry Potter books, but they would be kind of like readerly texts in a sense. Whereas the postmodern texts, experimental texts, texts which push forward the project of literary development, would be rightly in Barth's view. It would be, in his words, the perpetual present upon which no consequent language can be superimposed. The rightly text is ourselves writing. So Barth is calling for a kind of abolishing of the distinction between reading and writing. And I think when we look at that distinction, I don't think Goldsmith's work actually holds up to that. I'm not sure that the author is truly dead in conceptual writing, not in Goldsmith's conception of it anyway, because here we might think of Foucault, whom Goldsmith name dropped earlier, and in the author function, Foucault suggests that the author is not an indefinite source of significations which fill a work. So the author is not just the origin of language. Rather, the author is the guy who sets the terms and the parameters on which the text might be read. He's a certain functional principle by which one limits and excludes. So if I wanted to read Day as just an edition of the New York Times, Goldsmith prevents me from doing that because he set kind of the strict conceptual terms on which I might enter into this text. And we might further think about what Foucault says about authorship, that authorship exists for and is legitimized by a system of ownership for texts. It's got strict rules concerning author rights, author-publisher relations, rights of reproductions, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, what Foucault is really saying is that authorship is inextricably linked to capitalism. I'm going to gloss over this one part about materiality because I don't have time. But I want us to kind of like think here about the correspondence between writing as production and reading as consumption. And we need to think about quite practically, Kenneth Goldsmith suggests that the author is dead. But we know that Goldsmith as brand still exists. Goldsmith as famous name still exists. Goldsmith as the legal entity who's receiving the royalties for his books still exists. So the question I need to ask is, do dead authors dream of electric royalties? And now I want to kind of like ask the question of what a true writerly text in 2020 might look like. And I've got a certain idea, but let's just look at kind of what we've covered so far. I think a true writerly text to be a text which embraces computing technologies. It embraces internet processes, quotation, dematerialization, pastiche. It would be a kind of text which resists the capitalist system of ownership and publication. It would be a text which embraces the removal of restrictions on rights of reproduction. Instead, it allows for endless reply and rewriting so that the lines between reading and writing are truly blurred. And so what I want to suggest is that in 2020, the kind of writerly text that Barth is calling for looks like this. Just an internet meme. And I'm pretty serious about this. If you know this particular meme, this meme kind of gains currency because Gordon Ramsay has this reputation for being kind of this really gruff, strict figure. And the Sasuke meme is also a meme in which like it's taken this particular kind of screenshot of the figure, and people have photoshopped other sort of like figures to kind of to join up into this meme. And so this particular example of the internet meme is a very interesting example of two separate memes having this kind of intertextual dialogue. Now, what exactly are memes? So Limor Shifman, who's this, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, she's an Israeli writer, a professor, who suggests that she's quoting Richard Dawkins here, who is the original, the guy who originally coined this idea. He suggests that memes are kind of the intellectual correspondent to genes. Memes are small units of culture which spread from person to person by copying or imitation. So something like religion would be a meme in Dawkins' book because it's kind of spread intellectually. Now, in the internet age, memes have gone on to have taken on a more specific meaning. It's content, which is often user-generated, which propagates via the interwebs. And Schiffman defines this as cultural reproduction, which is driven by various means of copying and imitation, practices which have become essential in contemporary digital culture. Here we might even think of Paul Willis and his notion of symbolic creativity. So Willis talks about the way that youth subcultures in post-war Britain would find ways of expressing their identities in the way that they dressed, the kind of music they listened to, the vehicles they would ride. These people will often be shut out from means of expressing themselves in high culture, but they still find ways of kind of like practically expressing their creativity in kind of normal everyday ways, and quite outside the sort of system of authorship and artistry that we usually associate with creativity. So Schiffman goes on to talk about how memes actually have to be bad texts in the sense close to what Barth calls writerly texts. Memes have to have certain kinds of gaps and inconsistencies, which invite viewers to write in their absences. And these absences serve as a textual hook for further dialogue, so that readers kind of contribute to the conversation by creating new memes. And let's take a look at this particular meme, which some of you might be familiar with. This meme is called Lost. It came out from this one particular issue of a web comic called Control-Alt-Delete by Tim Buckley. And this comic usually kind of addresses, sort of slacker themes about gaming and, just like bros palling around and so on and so forth. But this one particular instance, it had a hard pivot to very serious subject matter, where it tried to talk about the main character's girlfriend having a miscarriage. And this kind of like whiplash in tone was so dramatic, and the kind of style, the presentation of it was so melodramatic as well, that people started parodying it and like creating several different versions of it. And eventually the parodies got so extensive and so kind of like widely known on the internet that you just needed to kind of like allude to the form of it, where you have one figure in the first panel, two in the second panel, two in the second panel, and one figure lying down in the fourth panel, and people will be able to understand what you're talking about. So this meme has been reduced to this form here, which is just like a series of lines. And this is really interesting to me as a student of English, because this is precisely how literary forms propagate. When you think about the sonnet, and we think about, for example, the way that the sonnet is being experimented with and adopted in contemporary literature, contemporary poetry, it kind of like looks exactly the same, where people have kind of just like taken the very basic building blocks of a certain form, and like that it's got 14 lines, that it's got a kind of like turn at the end, and very loosely built ideas out of it. So I think just examining the way that memes are propagated tells us very profound things about the way that literature ought to exist in 2020. And I think I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to end my presentation here. But yeah, my name is Samuel Caleb Wee, and the University of British Columbia, being funded by Nanyang Technological University. My email address is up there if any of you want to get in touch with me. And thank you very much.